This is the Blade-Tech Valor Duty Holster. BladeTech sent this to me for free, but all my opinions are my own and they did not ask me to provide a good or favorable review. With that out of the way, let's talk about it. Now for this review, I'll be comparing it to my Safariland duty holster, as that's what I've used most while being a cop and a civilian. First and foremost, the build quality is very robust. I feel like it's on par with the quality of Safariland for sure. I ended up getting it in the Glock configuration, where it supports a plethora of duty-sized Glock variants. They also offer a SIG version that supports the M18 P320 ecosystem, so there's that. They offer levels 1 through 3 retention, and in my case, I wanted to see their take on the level 3 retention, so I added that on there, but as you'll see later, I have some thoughts about it. Like Safariland, BladeTech has the option to add an optic shroud, which I would recommend, especially for those officers out there who eat in their car. Last thing you need is to draw out of the holster and find your open emitter optic to have last week Whataburger sitting in it. BladeTech also offers a front plate that integrates with their version of the QLS system, so you can add on an attachment, which in this case will most likely be a tourniquet. I also added on an extended end cap, so that way I could add on a comp and have it covered for future Glocks I end up getting, because I am, in fact, a Glock shill. Now, this is pointed towards you officers out there, but they do offer a signal sidearm adapter kit, so you Axon boys don't have to make a major adjustment to the holster just to get everything to work properly. Last, I ended up going with the Valor Duty drop with thigh strap, but if I could do it over again, I would have gone with the Tech Mount 360 insert disc and receiver on Valor Duty drop. God, that is such a wordy sentence. I originally thought you would be able to just use this with something like a QLS system from Safariland, but I found out that you really can't use that system without major modifications, so if you are considering using a quick detach system, you're going to have to buy into that disc ecosystem. Now, something I want to touch on there is that if you get the BladeTech disc mount, you can adjust the cant of your firearm on the fly. And I know there's a bunch of people that are going to be like, no, you can't your gun ever. No. Here's the thing. When I was an officer, I played out scenarios in my head where if I would need to draw out from the holster while sitting inside my patrol vehicle, things wouldn't be so fun. With a standard Safariland holster with no cant, that's a very difficult task. But if you had something like this where you could adjust the cant to where it's sitting straight up, then you can draw out with no issue. That's just a thought. So besides all that, how does this thing feel? Drawing out from the holster feels pretty smooth. Honestly, it doesn't tend to snag or do anything crazy whenever you're defeating the retention or anything like that. It really just feels pretty snappy. My purchase on the gun while drawing out doesn't feel blocked by anything, and I can get a pretty high tang on the grip without any issue whatsoever. I will say, while it is very familiar to the Safariland holster, it just takes a little bit more getting used to, as the button pull is just a smidge more than the Safariland. So again, just one of those things, you do enough reps, you get used to it. As I mentioned in the beginning, I originally got this in a level 3 retention. After attempting to draw out with that level 3 button shield, I pretty quickly got rid of it. The problem with it is that when you swipe the shield out of the way, your thumb ends up so far away from the button that the swipe backwards feels like a road trip from one end of Texas to the other. Long and hard. Pause. So yeah, in my case, I decided to get rid of it, and after I did so, I really started to enjoy how it felt to draw out from this thing. That was one of the major things I wanted to talk about this holster is its modularity. Now, I was like, oh man, I'm gonna have to take off this stupid freaking shield. It's gonna be a real pain in the butt. No, it was actually very easy. Taking off that level 3 retention was like 2 screws, and that was it. No major rocket brain surgery was required to make it how I liked it, so that's pretty cool. And I think ultimately that's really what BladeTech was going for, was a very off-the-shelf, easily customizable, semi-brand specific universal holster. And in my opinion, I think they did a great job. Now, to hit on the universality portion of things, this is pretty impressive. I personally have 5 Glocks, a Glock 22, 44, 43X, 19X, and 19. I could say with complete confidence after going through each that all of those except the 43X sit in the holster perfectly with zero rattling. The tolerances they have on this are sharp so that each time I holster up with any of those Glocks, it feels super secure. Now, while BladeTech even specifically says this won't work with the 43X, it can work. Not well, mind you, but there's a ton of play. Obviously, they didn't make it for this, and it's a single stack firearm, but it actually has retention, and it locks into place, so I mean, you can do it. I was also surprised, but not surprised, the Glock 44 fits so well. I mean, Glock made it to be almost a 1-to-1 of the 19, so it's not really a shock, but it's just cool that I don't have to get a different holster for each one of these firearms. They all just work so seamlessly. Another point that BladeTech made on their branding was that these holsters work with or without attachments. And once again, I can confirm these work great with or without lights or red dots or whatever else. I'm using a Surefire X300 here, and it slips into the holster perfectly on my 19X. And if I take it off, it works just the same, with again, zero play in its retention. Also, this is a random tangent, but their instruction manual is by far the best I've ever seen from any company. Super thorough and well put together. It'll literally answer any questions that you got about this thing. It's pretty cool. I have no interest in making this a 10-minute long video just for the algorithm, so here are my final thoughts. The problem I have at the end of the day is that while this thing is very cool, I have to ask the question, why not just go with a dedicated holster from Safariland for a cheaper price? Most police departments that issue a duty firearm don't tend to change models all that often. Personally, the justification I came up with is that officers that are required to buy their own equipment, including their own duty weapon, could have wider compatibility across models should they decide to switch to a different one down the line. Or, like in my case, where I have a large array of Glocks and don't want to have to change out the whole holster to practice my draw, and having a unified draw that makes muscle memory very easy, it makes sense. So if you're wanting to get this holster, here's what I recommend doing. Go with level 2 retention, include the chop guard. If you want to remove it later on, you can, but it's free, so just keep it. If you use optics, get the shroud that you need. Get the mounting plate if you intend on adding a tourniquet holster later on, which I would recommend. Go with the standard end cap unless you're intent on using a very long boy. Get the 1/4 inch offset, the tech mount 360 insert disc, and the receiver on Valor Duty drop. Now, this will put you at $300, but realistically for something comparable from Safariland, you'd end up about the same price for less universality and modularity. So, would I recommend this holster? If you have multiple Glocks, or SIGs, with varying attachments that you don't want to buy a ton of different holsters for, 100%, this is worth the money and then some. If you only have one Glock or SIG with not a ton of varying attachments, just stick with a Safariland holster. Personally, I really enjoy this thing and it will be taking over as my main duty holster moving forward. A massive shout out to Troop in the Discord for recommending I check this out. I really appreciate it, my man. But what do y'all think? Is this a holster you'd be willing to try? And what holster do you use now? Let me know down below. Anyways, thank you all so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. And as always, remember our sole objectives. Stop the killing, stop the dying. I'll see y'all later.